So today we'll be learning how to make pasta with my friend Brian Clevenger. He's a renowned Seattle chef here in Seattle, Washington, and he's been, such an amazing inspiration in the Seattle community. So with that said, Brian, if you want to give an introduction and let's get this party started.
My name is Brian, like you were just told. I'm in Seattle. We have a couple of restaurants. It's called General Harvest Restaurants. We have 7 places in Seattle right now, with our big focus being pasta, seafood, and vegetables. So the whole idea, again, with this is so everyone can see how we cook pasta in our restaurants, along with that, hopefully cook with us. So again, make sure we have a pot of water boiling. I don't add salt to this water. I know, somebody's gonna say that's crazy, but we'll explain why as we cook, and we'll start prepping everything. So as you can see, my section here is I have everything pulled out, from my herbs to my butter, cheese, 3 different mushrooms, lemon, and then my favorite dried pasta. So it's Rustichello di Abruzzo. And what makes this pasta unique is 100% durum wheat on a bronze dye. So what that means is it's really porous pasta and it absorbs the sauce really well. And it works well to our style of cooking, which is in the style of risotto. So first, we had mushrooms, right? Your favorite mushroom. Now, the reason I didn't add a specific mushroom is it all depends on what's readily available. From a cultivated mushroom to, being blessed here in Seattle, a lot of wild mushrooms. I have a mix of both, and that'll be the base of our pasta. Once I get these out, I've already washed them. I'm gonna start by trimming, and then this is like a large mushroom, and I'm just gonna kind of pull it apart. I don't think I could eat this much in one pasta. Again, continually reminding ourselves, it's not a mushroom dish, it's a pasta dish, right? So it has to all be about the pasta with accompaniments. And now I've got my larger mushrooms I'm gonna cut down. Again, I'm gonna cut them into larger pieces because I think this dish does really well with that. And then kind of these wedges, right? It needs to be small enough to where they're gonna cook in a saute pan, but we also don't want them to fall apart, right? And then I have my winter chanterelles, which are also known as a yellowfoot. I'm gonna leave these small ones whole, continually reminding yourself that cooking and food is so subjective. If you don't like, mint in a savory dish, don't add it. If you like more herbs than I add, or less herbs, or more butter, or more cheese, less cheese, completely up to you, right? You're cooking for what you think tastes good. Next, I'm gonna go over to my water, unsalted water. And again, we don't wanna season our water because that is gonna be the base of our pasta sauce. The style of risotto, meaning cooking the majority of it in the pan. And the beauty of that is you get to retain all the starch, right? You think you're generally at home and you cook your pasta and you kind of dump it out into this colander in the sink and all the white foam comes off. Well, we want to keep that. That white foam is pasta, right? So again, it is a pasta dish. So we do everything we can to keep this dish tasting like pasta.
Does it matter the type of pasta you use, perhaps the shape or the flour being used? And my other question, this dish is mostly for vegetarian. What kind of protein would you supplement this meal with?
I think that you cook pasta for how you want it to eat. So by that, I mean, we cook pasta that is all about the pasta. So we don't add a ton of stuff to it. So for this case, like a long shaped pasta, we'll call it long pasta, which could be spaghetti, linguine, bucatini, tagliatelle, stuff like that. And then with regards to pairings of protein, specifically in something like this, I would go with the mushrooms. You would lean kind of a heavier, more flavorful protein. I would say, braised meat would be really good, like a beef cheek. something that pairs well with earthy and rich flavors. Think red wine. So maybe a beef cheek braised in red wine would become the base with these mushrooms, because these mushrooms, specifically wild mushrooms or maitake mushrooms, really, really earthy flavors, big flavors for a mushroom. So you need something that's going to complement it and not get lost, right? Which is where like our mint comes into play, actually. I think mint and earthiness is like an amazing combination together. Okay, so we've got our mushrooms cut, our water's boiling, it's not seasoned. I'm going to add our pasta to it, kind of spreading it out, making sure the flame doesn't come up and burn the sides, and then we just let it go. And now we'll speak to why we don't season our water the way that we cook pasta. The reason is because we are going to use that water the pasta's cooking in as our sauce. It's all about making our pasta taste more like pasta. So we're going to keep that starch, and if there were salt in it, our end dish would get really salty, right? If you're continually reducing salted water, it would get really salty. That'll be the base of our sauce, which we're going to start building right now. I'm going to get a clove of fresh garlic, and this is, I would say, a medium-sized piece. So I'm probably only going to use half of this, to be honest. So when we use garlic, we make sure we cook it and we don't use a ton of it, right? It's something you want in your dish that adds to flavor, but you don't carry with you when the dish is gone. Garlic is really interesting that when you smash it, you'll notice it gets really floral and it gets kind of sticky. And what that is the essential oils in there are meeting, and that's where the sticky floralness comes in. But the negative to that is it's now starting to go bad, right? So you want the beauty of it because it's really fresh now, but you also don't want it smashed from 2 days ago because you're going to start to lose the beauty. So now I'm just going to slice really thin, and I'm going to move that to the side. While that's there, I'm going to get my pan turned on medium. I'm going to check my pasta. Since it's starting to cook, I can move it a little bit. You don't want to move it too early because it'll break. A little bit of extra virgin olive oil here. It shouldn't be oily. So while that's heating up, again, we want it to just get to a smoke point, right? While that's heating up, I'm going to pick my herbs. So I have some thyme. I've got some parsley. So this is my mint. I'm just going to cut it into squares. This is where a sharp knife becomes very, very important. I know it can be a little bit scary, but the sharper the knife, the cleaner the cut. So now we can see I'm just now starting to smoke. It's okay to remove it from heat, just be careful. So now I'm gonna go right in with my mushrooms. You can hear starting to cook. We're not gonna season these yet, no salt yet. Spread them all the way around. So you can see I'm all the way around my pan. You don't want them too close because they'll steam. And the reason we didn't want to season them yet is salt extracts moisture. We don't want moisture out yet, right? We want the caramelization of the hot oil. And keep in mind, we're going to add this pasta to our pan before it's completely cooked. Working it in our pan to get that starch to release, but now we get to keep it in there. But also when you keep that starch in there, you have to add less what I call bad fat to make it really flavorful and rich. Meaning, the more starch we keep in our pasta, the less butter and cheese we have to add to make it rich and flavorful, and making the sauce stick to the pasta. Generally, that's how restaurants do it, is they add a lot of fat to it. Well, we got to do it by keeping more pasta in the dish. I've got my mushrooms here. We're going to keep cooking them. I don't have a ton of color yet. They're still firm, so we're okay. I'm going to add it back on. Turn my heat down a little bit. We will have to move pretty quickly in a minute just because we don't want our pasta to overcook in the pot of water. My mushrooms shrunk down quite a bit, right? But now I'm starting to get color. They're starting to get cooked. I'm going to add a little bit of butter. You saw 1 tab of butter. I'm going to add a little bit of parsley. I'm going to add my herbs. I'm going to add my garlic. Now I'm going to cook all this together, and then we're just going to let it go. Remember, we still haven't added any salt to this yet because we don't want any moisture to get extracted. As soon as our garlic starts to caramelize or get a little bit of color, then we'll add salt and it'll stop the cooking at that point. And then we'll add pasta water, our pasta, and start cooking in the style of risotto. You can start to see here, it's really floral. I can smell the thyme with the mushrooms. My garlic doesn't have any color yet, so I'm gonna cook a little bit longer. Again, we wanna cook our garlic, but not burn our garlic. So I'm gonna go about, I don't know, 45 more seconds, maybe a minute. And then I'm gonna add my pasta. As you can see, we're not straining into a colander, right? We really want this pasta water. And now I'm taking all the foam, the white from the top. That's the base. You can see here, I've got this, and there's just a bunch of water in there, right? And my pasta itself, when you look at it, there's still white in the middle, meaning it's still raw. When you bite it, and it doesn't break on its own, right? As soon as it can bend without breaking on its own, you want to add to your pan. And honestly, that's the beauty of dry pasta, is you can get a true al dente without it being overcooked, whereas fresh, really challenging to get a true al dente. So now I'm gonna mix. Just like risotto, get that starch. I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of salt, a couple cracks of pepper, and keep that going. It's on medium heat still. Just don't get too crazy with adding too much pasta water at the start because you need it to reduce. If you had too much to start, your pasta could get overcooked with too much pasta water in your pot. So I've got mine here. My pasta's still not cooked, and it's actually starting to get thick already. Just because I've been working that starch off my pasta, it's thickening my sauce already. I still need about 2 to 3 more tablespoons of this water. Again, I'm taking the starch from the top, and don't be afraid to taste as you go. That's the only way you're gonna learn. So water, you wanna add about 4 tablespoons at a time. And I just used a ladle or a large spoon just to put it on top. And now I just added the other half of my butter. So now you can see it's still a little bit loose and runny. That starch will bring it back. And you can see I'm not even on the heat, but working that starch off, literally working it, it's already thick. See that? It's just from the starch. So again, we're getting the thick and creamy pasta we like because of the starch. My pasta's pretty close. All I have left is I'm gonna finish it with a little creme fraiche. You don't have to add it if you don't have any. Another touch of pasta water, cheese, and mint, and finish it with a little bit of lemon, and that's it.
I'm using gluten-free pasta. Does that still have like the same amount of starch? Because it doesn't look like it's full.
No. So gluten-free pasta, you're gonna wanna cook almost all the way in your pot because it'll break in your pan if you don't, because the gluten is what makes the body of the sauce, right? So what I would suggest is still adding some of your pasta water as the base, and then butter, cheese, creme fraiche, and more pasta water to get the consistency you want.
For me, it was very hard to find the creme fraiche. I don't know how you say that.
Creme fraiche, yeah.
Is like the sour cream a good substitute, or what would you recommend? I already got a sour cream, but maybe for the future.
Yeah, I would just omit it. There's different fat contents, and sour cream will break. It'll separate the milk solids from the fat contents, where creme fraiche won't. So you can only take sour cream to a certain temperature before it breaks. So it may get gritty if you use sour cream, but creme fraiche won't. So they're both cultured. They're both a little bit sour, which is nice, but they react differently to heat. So I'm adding 1 tablespoon of creme fraiche. I'm gonna add some of my lemon zest. Again, if you don't like lemon zest, it doesn't need it. I like it though. Lemon zest, mint, Parmesan. I like a lot in there. For me, if Parmesan's gonna go on top, I think it should go in too. Here's what it looks like. I've just got kind of everything sitting there. I've got cheese, creme fraiche, herbs, and now I'm gonna mix it in. And you'll notice that it's gonna tighten up immediately with that cheese. As that cheese melts, So you may want to add more pasta water, and that's okay. I'm gonna add a teeny bit of pasta water. Now I think I'm in a really good spot. So now it's not about the sauce because it's still just coating the pasta, but it's not too tight. So I'm gonna taste it before I plate because we've only seasoned it once. I'm gonna bring it back to a boil and then it's ready. So you can see how all my pasta is covered in sauce and it's not like pooling all around it, right? I'm gonna taste it one more time. I personally like a lot of black pepper with mushrooms as well.
If I wanted to have meatballs with this dish, would I cook it in a separate pan or would I cook it with the mushrooms and everything?
What I would do is, if you're gonna add an extra sauce with those meatballs, I would pre-roast the meatballs in the oven at a pretty high temperature. Meaning I would take this pan, I would sear the meatballs off in it, right? Get rid of that excess oil, but leave that residual, what we call fond, in the bottom. Cook your meatballs in the oven, then do this exact dish like we've shown, and then put the meatballs back in at the end.
I am vegan, so I can't do creme fraiche. So what would be an alternative for me? And my pasta, I did chickpea elbow macaroni.
Using the mushrooms, I would probably add a little more mushroom, to be honest. I would add a little more lemon. I would probably use the zest and the juice in there.
Okay.
I wouldn't use like butter and cheese substitutes. I wouldn't. I would say if you're gonna go completely vegan, don't use manufactured substitutes for those. I would just cook it completely vegan. I would do this same way. I would add a little more garlic in my oil. I would add a little more extra virgin olive oil. And then instead of cooking the pasta in the pan like we did here, cook it 100% in the boiling water, and then use that water just to emulsify your oil with water.
For my butter, I did the Earth Balance butter.
And it didn't separate, it didn't get oily. Perfect.
Nope.
Add a little bit more of that at the end as it melts in there, and it'll tighten your sauce up. And then I wanna show how I plate, right? So on this, I'm just gonna stir everything up. Again, notice how there's not a bunch of liquid down there, right? So I'm gonna stir this all up in here, and we're not gonna pull it out. I'm gonna pull it out the side. And the reason we do that is we wanna keep all the sauce on the pasta. And if we were to pull it out, it would get separated from it, right? So then I'm gonna use my spatula, get the little bit that's on the bottom here. So now here's my dish before I add cheese to it. You can see, this is what I would look at to see if my dish is cooked the way I want it. There's not a bunch of liquid in the bottom, right? All of the sauce is sticking to the pasta itself, right? Along with that, the pasta is still in the shape it came in, meaning it's not a bunch of broken pieces. And that the color, it goes from a yellow semolina with this specific one to a little bit lighter of a color. And that's how you can tell it's done before you even taste it. And then I go a little more Parmesan on. Again, for me, if we're adding Parmesan or cheese in it, it could be pecorino, then I think we also put it on top. And that's the finished dish. So all that hard work of searing our mushrooms, cooking our garlic, toasting half of our herbs, then getting that starch grabs the pasta, so we get to add less bad fat to achieve the rich, sticky pasta sauce while making our dish taste more like pasta.
My son wants to know what else can he put in the pasta because he doesn't like mushrooms.
The biggest takeaway from this dish isn't the recipe. The biggest takeaway is the method on how you cooked the pasta. So that's the beauty of our style of food, is once you learn the methodology or how we cook pasta and why, now you can make it your own. Because again, there's nothing more subjective than food and art, right? And so now you can take how we cook that pasta and pair it with whatever you want. Again, like when the last person who mentioned meatballs, perfect. Once tomatoes are in season, throwing some chopped tomatoes in there with the meatballs, perfect. If you like bacon in there. Before you add the garlic, add chopped bacon in there to get crispy, then add garlic.
You make his day by saying bacon. Thank you.
My son loves bacon too. We were talking about that earlier.
First of all, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Brian. You're the best. I just had a question. So if I'm looking for wines, what would you say is a good wine to pair with this?
I would say a Pinot Noir, some Shiraz, some Merlot would be a good idea. So if I'm going to pair a red to this, pair it to the mushrooms. If you're going to pair a white to this, I would pair, I hate to say it, but the idea of a Chardonnay or a Soave, something like that, Northern Italian variety would be great. It's California stuff, paired to the creme fraiche at that point.
I just wanted to say that this is super good. I was blown away by the no salted water. So I had to dump my water out, start all over, and I was behind on that. So that one kind of blew me away. I've heard about it, but I've never done it that way. I just want to say everything you do in the pasta world, man, is lit. So this was really cool,
Thank
dude.
you.
Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
I did my mise en place ahead, so we
Smart.
were on point. Yeah, man. So
It sounds like you're
appreciate it.
familiar with kitchens. You know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, man. I've been cooking 17 years, so
Yeah.
I'm stepping away in a couple of weeks. So it's cool that I get to do it at my house now, finally, with
Yeah.
some cool people I've looked up to my whole life. So it's cool, man. Appreciate this.
So we made our pasta and now we have leftover uncooked pasta.
Yeah.
So how should we store that to save it to use again?
Oh, you made fresh?
We made fresh.
Get out of town. Let me see it.
Well, I ate most of it, but
You made fresh spaghetti?
well, he did. I didn't. I didn't do it. He did it. Tulum
Did you
did it.
hand cut it and roll it? How'd you make it?
Rolled it, hand cut it.
You're an animal. I love it. What I would do with the fresh, so we make about 400 pounds of fresh pasta a day in my bakery, and then we ship it out to our restaurants and some other restaurants. What I do is I portion it while it's fresh, right? Because you don't want to have a big, massive ball of, say, spaghetti. So I would portion it fresh and then put it in a Ziploc bag and then put it in the cooler. You want to have a little bit of air in there, not a lot. Did you use egg in it?
Mm-hmm.
So what I would do is I would only keep that for about 2 to 3 days
Gotcha.
because of the egg.
Okay.
I'm so glad you made fresh pasta. God, that pumps me up.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. I highly recommend everyone to visit Brian's restaurants. I'll share some links in the channel. But hey, Brian, if you wanted to have any last words.
Again, the whole idea behind this is less about the recipe and more about the technique and methodology. Get comfortable with cooking pasta in this style, and now you'll cook it like your favorite restaurants do. It is a little bit challenging at first, but it gets much, much easier. And then just trust yourself. If it tastes good to you, make it happen.
Thanks again, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, thanks,
Share those
everybody.
Photos. Tag us at Alpha Girl Club, #Alpha Chef Series. We'll see you guys in the chat and at our next event. So thanks again, Brian.
All right, take care.